Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining me again. Here we are for another episode where we continue building Java stuff with Agentic AI. And with that being said, use your AI, anti-AI glasses. And let's start with today's episode. I plan today to build some authentication and authorization because it's basically one of my favorite subjects. So I want to see how Agentic AI behaves on that. And I have created an empty, here it is, an empty authorization server that I plan to use. So I want to build an OAuth 2 fashion authentication. So this is basically, as you can see, empty. I've just created a project and make sure it builds just before today's episode, and it's nothing more than an empty Spring Boot with the only dependency I've added is the Spring Boot starter OAuth 2 authorization server. So what I want to do is build an authorization server, and then I will make the other backend that we were working on, I will make it my resource server. So in this way, next time we can think about building also a client for this backend, and we can see how this actually works. So theoretically, this way we can prove that we can work on multiple components of the system using Agentic AI. I will continue keeping a monolithic approach. Maybe you have observed already that I didn't split this into multiple services, because again, I do recommend always pay attention when you choose your architecture. Know how many users will you have? Do you really need scalability? Do all the trade-offs that come with microservices make sense? So yeah, normally I could have split this into multiple services, but for me it doesn't make sense. Not at the moment, not considering this is only a school writing management system that will be maybe used in the first place by maybe some hundreds of users, which is not a really large number of users for which a monolithic application would actually make more sense. Maybe depending on how much fun we have, we can try at some point splitting this monolithic application into microservices using Agentic AI. But for the moment, let's keep it simple now, and hope you are here with me. I see some of you already in the live chat. Thank you very much for being here. Remember, you have the live chat. Remember, you can write your messages and questions. And remember, if you are not here with us live, you can write your comments in the comment section. You can find me on LinkedIn and X. And at the same time, remember to also tell your friends about the channel in case you like the content. So with this being said, let's try to work on the authorization server. So again, it's an empty project because what we try to do today is use as less as possible our brains, as much as possible artificial intelligence, and see how it works and try to learn how to use it properly, how to use it efficiently. And efficiently, for me, maybe I need to repeat this every now and then. Efficiency is not only about speed, but also about the quality of the result. The quality of the result means the architecture, the right compromises we take, the design, the code, and the quality of the code, how maintainable the code is. Does it apply properly all the principle it needs to apply? Does it use abstraction properly? Does it include code smells or not? We want to have as much quality as possible. So regardless of us using AI, what we want to actually do is to prove not that AI builds something, but to learn how to use it properly. So where can we find the latest version of Spring Security in Action source code? So the source code for my books, they are always on the Manning website, on the books page. You can find on the left side, you have a link, and you can download the archive from there. If you don't find it, please ping me on LinkedIn and I will give you the link directly. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let me put in. So what do I want to do here? So please configure the security filter chain for this authorization server. So the first step of creating an authorization server is configuring the filter chain. Here is where we will have to put everything we need in terms of the login page redirection, authentication on all the endpoints, and enabling OpenID Connect. So here we'll have to put for the moment a minimal configuration that includes the login page, authorization on endpoints, and enabling OpenID Connect. Because I know I will use OpenID Connect, let me use the Brave mode here to allow it run commands on behalf of myself. And let's see what happens. So normally it should create a configuration class and it should create a bin of type security, actually 2 bins of type security filter chain. That's what I expect. Still, for the moment, probably has to read if I have the dependency and everything. So look, it created the security configuration. Fine, I'm happy with that. Let's see what it contains. So 2 bins of type security filter chain, exactly what I expected. So hooray, let's make sure that the entire configuration makes sense. No, so we do have, this is the method that usually starts with applying the default security configuration, and then we enable OpenID Connect, as you can see, using default configuration since we didn't expect it to configure anything. It mentioned the /login page as being the redirect as the default, and it has authenticated all the endpoints, including a form login for my authorization server. It will be more than enough. I don't want to write an extraordinary login page for this app. I want it to simply work. So for the moment, I would say, hey, this works appropriately. So it made the right changes, at least the changes that I expect. And now what do we actually need next? We do need to have at least one client and at least one user. So let's take them one by one. In my experience, it's better with Agentic AI to not flood it with too many things, because then maybe because of the context, maybe because of the, I don't know, giving too few information or something in the prompt, it starts to behave unnatural, and it starts to behave like it puts a less relevant code than you expect in there. So I would start with the client and I would say, please, and for the moment, I don't want a database. I just want to have in memory. If it works with in memory, then I will be able to create first of all the client and everything, and then I will be able to change the in-memory implementation with a more appropriate implementation that uses, for example, a database which I expect it to be separate from the one that I use from the resource server, because that's why I split the responsibility. So observe that even though I keep a monolithic resource server, now as I've said, I do prefer to separate the authorization server responsibility. It makes more sense, since the authorization server then can serve different other resource servers of the organization. So considering that now I'm doing this as a software of my startup, say, then I do expect that it's something usual in the future. I'll have some different components that will need authentication. So it's always, from my experience, a good idea to separate your authorization server. Of course, even a better idea would be at the beginning to initially use Keycloak, or a similar software, but Keycloak is probably the most known, since normally you don't need to have such what the authorization server gives you is it enables you to customize everything, but normally you don't need to have such a fine-grained customization. So it's very unlikely that if you now start with like kind of a software system like this, you need to jump directly into using Spring Authorization Server. It's rather more likely than that using a key cloak would be a better approach. And you have the third approach as well. And the third approach is basically using identity as a service, which means something from a cloud like Cognito, for example, or from whatever cloud you use. But remember that costs more money in terms of like you have to pay for the usage, and secondly, it links you to the vendor. So, well, maybe today you deliver your software into AWS, but maybe tomorrow you want to be able to easily change. So using kind of an as a service, like an identity as a service, it's usually risky and it changes you to a specific kind of cloud, which I do not really recommend, no, unless you will be there with AWS forever and you want to pay a lot of money for that. So that being said, I would go with Keycloak, but since this stream is not about configuring Keycloak, it's about working with Spring applications, then I prefer to take the approach of using the Spring Authorization Server framework and customize it myself. So what do I want to do here is please add me an in-memory management for clients, add one client only. It needs to support the authorization code and the client credentials grant types. Please hard code the client for time being. Okay, so I don't want a database. It's not a problem that the secret will be there in code, because this is only a proof of concept, a test. So the only thing I need is to make it work for now, and then when I have it working, I can exchange this implementation to a different implementation. So let's see if things go well. So I'm reading your book, Spring Start Here, then search by, since all developers are developers, job dead. Do I look like I'm not developing here? Do you think that this AI will just run by itself with no one steering it? I don't think so. I think there will always be people making sure that AI does what it needs to do. So no, I don't think development is changed, but it's different than what it used to be years ago. Now we progressively use more AI, and maybe in the future we'll even use more AI and just take a look on the code and review it. Why do you think we are still using the Java language, which is like something readable for humans, and why don't we just then use AI to write the binary code directly? No, I bet that AI can do that, can directly write binary, which is much better. You don't need a compiler anymore. But since we do want to see the code and understand the code that the AI generates, then I'm pretty sure that we will always have something to do. So no, I don't think development is dead. I think just development will change, but good developers will still be good developers and will need to know a lot of things. So yeah, I'm not recommending you another field, since development is the only thing I'm doing, and the only thing I'm doing really well. But of course, if that's not what you like doing, then my recommendation as a person is always do the thing that makes you happy. So that's what I would do. So you see, I like actually the fact that it separated the client configuration. Do you see it? So it created a separate class. I love that. I would have done the same thing actually, because I like segregating the responsibilities as much as possible. In this case, well, it's only a bin. No, you said, okay, it's still part of the security configuration, so we could have put it there. That's fine. But then, yeah, in that case, we can also consider that, hey, client configuration, when we'll have a database and something will become a little bit bigger, so maybe extracting it into a separate class makes more sense. So let me see actually what actually did here. So client secret no op, it means we don't hash the password. This is something we never do in a real world application, okay? But for what we need now, because it's only a POC, okay? And I will change this later into some application with a database where the passwords will be hashed strongly using either bcrypt or argon 2, okay, which are the two best choices you have today in terms of hashing. For the moment, it makes sense since the only thing I need is, again, having something to work. So it's in memory anyway. You never hardcode things unless you do that only for temporary being. So we have authentication method allowed through basic and through post. You can have multiple, that's fine. We enable refresh token client credentials, and I'm not actually sure why it chose to enable client credentials. Did I actually ask for client credentials? I'm not sure. Let me. Oh, I did actually. I did ask for client credentials. Oh, I don't know. I don't know why I chose to ask for client credentials, because we do not have to use it now. Fine enough, my mistake. Refresh token makes sense. You usually need to have a refresh token, and then some dummy scopes, some redirect URI. We don't know yet. It's unlikely it will be on this port, no, because on this port we will have the resource server. And I think for the time being, when we'll start with the client, we will use some different server on a different port. So by the way, with that being said, I think we'll actually also need to enable cores, no, to release the course constraints on the resource server, but that's something to come. Client settings with the default, and it works fine. I like it. It makes sense. We can jump into the next one, which will be, please add me an in-memory user configuration. Please also add an in-memory dummy user for test purposes only. Let's see what's doing. So now hopefully it will create some new bean in a configuration class for the user, and theoretically that should be enough for an authorization server. So the next thing I'm gonna do is go on the horseback riding backend resource server, actually backend, and transform it into a resource server. No, so that's what we want to do. Okay, user details. We have a user password encoder. This is not. Oh, okay, it's good. It's good because it also encrypted the password. Fine enough. I'm happy with that. Okay, we can do that. I was. I had the impression that it's using a plain text password, but also a password encoder, which would not have worked. No, but since it actually encoded as well the password, then I'm happy with what I'm seeing. And normally this one should use a different port. So server port 8081, since 8080 is already taken by our backend. No, I wrote it by hand because it didn't make sense to use any AI for that, only for adding a small property. I'm gonna run it to make sure that's running, and if it's running, and it looks like it's running, I think for the time being is what we need. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna go to the backend and transform the backend into a resource server. Actually, we can test that at least it shows the configuration, no? And assuming I don't know that the JW keys, for example, is the key endpoint, I would, or OpenID configuration is the endpoint for the configuration. I would like to actually ask Claude, can you tell me the default configuration endpoint of this server? I'm actually curious if it can actually tell you that. No, it's no. Open ID configuration endpoint. No, because you don't necessarily know this by heart. No, so okay, much better. This is it. This is it. So I need to have to be a little bit more explicit. I'm gonna actually open a browser and I'm gonna call it and make sure that this works. So it actually works. I'm gonna bring it. Oh, can't I bring it here? Why can't I bring it here? Yeah, anyway. I'm not sure why I can't bring it here. Maybe I can do the same thing with Postman. Maybe it's easier. 8081. And it works, but again, this time, so it must have been something with my Mac not allowing me for any reason to put this here. So maybe it works like that. And hopefully you still see. Oh, here it is. Okay. Okay, so I'm calling, now look, I'm calling the, let me see if you are still seeing what I'm sharing. Yeah. So I'm calling the endpoint. It's basically what I've copied from the AI agent. And you can see I get here the configuration, including some, okay, no, I need to go to the keys endpoint if I want to see the keys. How do I do that without opening it in a browser? Like that. Here it is. And we have by default one key. So this is the key ID, and this is the public key from the pair that a resource server could use. This endpoint is very important. Actually, more important is this one. The issuer one is, but I don't see it exactly. But anyway, the issuer endpoint is basically more. The issuer endpoint. Sorry, it was actually the first one. I would have it in something like /issuer, and that's why I was so dumb. So this is the more important. That usually we'll have to configure into the resource server, and then by that we'll basically have all the configuration, and then you don't need to explicitly tell it which is the keys or the introspection or the revocation. See, by default you have revocation endpoint, you have the introspection endpoint, so you have everything you need. Back to my code. Okay, back to my code. I'm gonna go to horseback riding school, and I'm gonna use my agent and say, please configure Spring security in this project. Make all endpoints need authentication and enable authentication as a resource server using the following issuer URL, which was http localhost 8081, and that's it. No, so it was just like that. So let's see what happens. So normally we should see this configuration. So what am I trying to build? So at the moment I'm basically, this is, I don't know, the 5th episode or something like that. We are building an example of a simple Spring Boot service with endpoints, open API, and so on. And we already built some endpoints, and now we are trying to build the authentication. So if you want some of this, is not the first episode. If you are interested, you can quickly jump through all the others. So we have registered, you find them here on this channel, and I will continue the playlist, like working on this system and adding more stuff, including some front end I want and things like that. And basically my plan is trying to do that without my brain. So I want to, as much as possible, use less of my brain, more of the artificial intelligence if possible. I would like as much as 100% AI and me without too much intervention. But everything that AI does, I will review, and that's where the difference comes. If I'm showing you, hey guys, this is how you should work with Agentic AI. Do not trust anything that AI do for you. Always review and make sure that the changes it did are appropriate. So for example, in my case here, did it add the right dependency? Yes, it looks like it added the right dependency. And let's see what it did here. So it actually configured the issuer ID. I want to see the config class as well. No. And you can see that it configured the Auth resource server and said, hey, use this with JVT, and this lambda expression doing nothing here means is the default configurer. So it looks good. Now I'm just gonna put here final, because I prefer to have local immutability as much as possible. This exception is not needed here, no. Okay, so that's why we can take it out as well. So you see, I want you to not simply just, hey, this works, I want to leave it like, I will leave it like that. Why did it add the enable web security here? Does it make sense? No, it doesn't make sense, because enable web security, it makes sense only if you have here the parameter configured on true. No, so you have debug true. This enables some logging on the web security part, and it's very valuable when we want to debug stuff. But if that's on false, then the enable web security here does literally nothing, so you don't need it. No, so please be attentive, because sometimes your Agentic AI doesn't do the things 100% properly, you know, so you want to make sure that that this is not only working but also looks good. No, you've seen only on this class. No, a final word, okay, maybe this is not big, but one more annotation and so on. No, these things, these are code smells, these add up. No, and if you simply just trust your AI, like doing the things for you without you reviewing it, even these things that they look to be now they look to be nothing, no, but they add up on throughout the time, no, and then you will end up at some point with an application that is no longer maintainable. So with this being said, theoretically now we should be able to so now I do have, I don't see where it added you. Oh, okay, here it is. So authorized request, any request authenticated. That's good, expected. I prefer to put it somehow differently, if you don't mind. I'm not actually sure exactly how, but it looks very strangely. Anyway, I do usually prefer to have the authentication before the authorization, but yeah, okay, let's leave it like that. It's maybe IntelliJ formatting it this way. So with this being said, now I want to have like an endpoint, a demo endpoint that decomposes the token, and I want to be able to see the token myself. This way I will be able to prove that the authentication works correctly. So let me do something like that. I'm gonna go start a new chat and say, can you please implement me a demo endpoint that simply returns the authentication object from the security context? So what I actually want is I want to be able to call this endpoint with a JVT token, and then I want to prove that what comes back looks like what I want it to look like. So it created a demo endpoint, not really in the place I would have expected. Also, please take a look that it didn't follow the convention, no? So instead of using Open API, it added it directly with get mapping. This is wrong, so I'm going to discard it. So normally, even if it is a demo endpoint in my application, a test endpoint or whatever one you want to name it, it still need to follow the convention. So I'm gonna try something different. I'm gonna try doing it like that. So can you please add an open API contract for a new endpoint called user that will return a string representing the authentication object in the security context. So what I want is only change the Open API specification and not the Java code yet. Now this way I will make sure that it implements it properly. So interesting will be exactly where it will add this, because I would prefer to have separate files. So please create me separate components YAML and paths YAML files for this endpoint, same as you already see in the project for horses and students. And remember what I was telling you, always give it an example. So it's much better if you provide an example, because it will be easier to give it the context of what exactly do you want. So far we've built some endpoints, and in this episode actually we built an authorization server, and I'm trying to actually build the authentication, at least the backend part, so that maybe next time I can try add a client side for it, like an Angular application or something like that. So let's see, pass user components and probably change the Open API, which makes sense. Oh, this is good. This is what we wanted, no? So let's keep the changes. I was very quick with that. So required username on the object. I'm not sure exactly if this is exactly what I want, but it looks good at the first sight. I'm gonna clean install the project so that it generates the auto-generated files, and when that is done, I will override myself in a controller. No, basically, let me actually see, did it create a different interface for that or not? I hope it actually did. I will see. We'll see. So normally I would actually do something like user controller, and then I'll say implements, should be something like user API. Here it is. And then I'm gonna override the method. Okay. Generate, override, and get user. No. And then I'm gonna say, hey agent, please implement this endpoint to return the info from the authentication object in the security context. So this will be something that I will then be able to use to prove my authentication. No, I'm always doing something like that. So once this is this is working, then should be pretty easy to test the authentication. Let's see what it did. It took the authentication from the security context, got the username, created a user response, which contains only the username. I'm fine with that. And then it returned this. So it looks good to me. And then I actually need to add the appropriate annotations. Okay on that. And that's it. It says that a null pointer can be thrown. Normally this should not be possible since this endpoint is authenticated, so you cannot end up here without an authentication object. So we can leave it like this, is not a problem. Good. And then I will simply tell it in a new chat, please. Maybe it's actually on the authorization server. I would have to say, please give me the redirect URL I need to use in the browser to log in and get an authorization code. So that's basically, it should provide me with the URL that I can put in the browser. Normally the browser will redirect me to the login page. I will fill in the user credentials, which is test user and password, test user and password, and then it will redirect me back to whatever page is specified here. It's not important, by the way, which is the page. No, sorry, in the client config. With this page is the redirect URI, okay? So it will redirect me here. This is not important for the moment. It will give me a 404 not found, but it will provide me with an authorization code. Authorization code which normally should be usable to get a JVT token, which is the access token. And not only a JVT token, but also a refresh token, because I have configured both the authorization code and the refresh tokens grant types on this client. So normally this should be the case. So it gives me your client ID, your redirect URI, your scopes. I would have actually preferred it to give me an already filled in, no, let's put it like that, an already filled in so I'm gonna do the same thing here. I would like to have you seeing what I'm doing. So like that. Okay, so authorized client ID was, let's see, client ID was, so client and secret, okay, bang. So it's client, and then redirect URI will be this one. Zoom. Here it is. And then your scope will be read. It's one of the scopes we need. And then, okay, I'm redirected to the login page. I think it was test user and password. Okay, so test user and password. Okay, yeah, I know I don't have a really good password. Then I see the submit, the consent is submitted, and here it is. We have the authorization code. Woohoo! That means that our authorization server really works. So now guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna ask my Agentic AI Now please give me the token endpoint example call so I can get an access token. And let's see what it happens now. You say I'm making development faster. I would say, hey, yes, for me, I mean, if you know how to use it, now you can say it makes things faster. So for example, I don't have to like remember all these things all the time. It's difficult. It says with basic auth or with a shell script. So I'm gonna URL form encode it. Then I need to have the grant type, the authorization code, the redirect URI, the client ID and secret with HTTP basic. So first of all, let me actually copy this. Now we are doing it step by step. No, and it's the post here, and then we need some parameters, I guess. Or is the URL encoded? No, it said use the URL encoded. Okay. Grant type authorization code. Grant type authorization code. That's what we are using. Makes sense. Then we have code. This is the code here. So I have to very carefully copy it completely and put the value here. Then we'll have the redirect URI, which should be matching the one we've used, otherwise it will not work. Then we have the client ID and secret. I'm gonna just put them with basic here, and I think it was client and secret, if I correctly remember. So this is it, and let's see what happens. Oh no, invalid client. Oh, because it wasn't client, it was it client? So it was a client or it wasn't client? Client, and our client is client. So why is this not a good client? This is interesting. Client ID and secret. Client ID and secret. That's good. Yes, I'm using Spring Security here. Why doesn't it not work though? I can try actually with the post as well, but normally this one should have worked as well. No. So let me debug it one more time. So I have client, then I have secret, and then in the body, grant type authorization code, the one that I've copied, redirect URL is the one that I copied. Well, this is strange, to be honest, because I do have the basic enabled here, and I would have expected it to work appropriately. But then, of course, let's actually take it from the beginning. By the way, the code is not reusable anymore. So if you ever do something like this, like you've use it and it gave an error, do not try to reuse the same code again, because it will not work. So what I will have to do is I will have to again so client, redirect URI, and read. Oh, the scope is missing here. I think that is actually the problem. No, I'm not requesting any scope. But look, it didn't tell me, and I wasn't attentive. But I'm pretty sure that the scope should also be specified here. I'm gonna actually ask, should the scope not be specified as well in the token endpoint? So I do think that the scope should also, I remember the scope should be, you ask the token, you have to request a specific scope. Typically not required. Okay, fine enough. I'm gonna say I'm believing it, but I'm not. But I'm gonna still, like, let me take this, generate a new authorization code, and then try it again. No. So here it is. As a scope, I want the read one. And then I already logged in, so I have a session. No, so I will be provided directly with a new code. I'm gonna replace the new code here, and I will add client secret. And then if this doesn't work, I will try with the scope as well. No, it basically didn't work. So I've tried with basic, I've tried with this. I'm pretty sure I'm not making any mistake. So now what I'm gonna do probably is I'm gonna try with the scope as well here, which I think is what we need. But then I will have again to reauthorize. Now usually again, this is only available was this it? Authorized and read. Okay, I do get another authorization code. So this first part works correctly. I need to figure out why the second one didn't work. Still not. So at the moment, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. So I think we are in the place where we should actually. So now the second one, this one with password, is because I'm not using the right authorization code, maybe. I'm gonna try it again. So client and secret. This is really incredible. So it says invalid client regardless of the fact that I use the good client here. Okay, really this got me stuck. So I would say calling the token endpoint gives me invalid client error, even if I know I use the right and only one. Maybe it knows something more than I do. No. So let's see. If that doesn't work, then I will figure out afterwards and tell you next time, because no, it might take me some minutes to debug that, and it doesn't make sense to do it like that. So client secret, the no op is just spring weight indicating, yeah, I'm doing that. I found the issue client secret is stored with no op prefix. This means it's using Spring Security's password encoder notation. Token endpoint, you need to use the I'm doing that. I'm doing that already. But by the way, what if I'm actually doing this? Maybe this is the problem. Let's try one more time. Because I was using it without no op, I know that, so I'm not that dumb, no. It's not like it's the first time I'm using this. So let me actually take it completely out. Okay, let's see. Then I'm gonna again get an authorization code. Really? Client ID, client, redirect URI, this one here. And scope read. Okay, it was test user and password, no? So test user with password. Okay, and then we have a problem now, and this is probably because it really needs a password encoder. So that no op was actually a good one there, but either I put that or I have to specify probably a password encoder of its own. So I'm not sure that is the problem. But I'm gonna tell it I wasn't using the nope. Okay, so maybe then okay, so the problem was it was its configuration. No, I understand. I think it's because for the user it provided a bcrypt password encoder, but then for the client it assumed that the password is plain text, so it should either be one or the other. No, so what we can actually do for the moment would be to change. I will do that manually. I'm gonna do that manually. So I will change this like that. And then I'm gonna go to the user config and for the moment say return no op password encoder. Again, we have to change this into a bcrypt. So this only works for the moment since we are doing a POC, but never do this in a real world application. No, but we just want to see it working. So should I put this on its shoulders? The last minutes that I've spent are my fault or are the agent's fault because it configured it improperly and then I didn't, like I wasn't aware and I had to spend some time to debug. So what do you actually think? Whose fault is here? Can we actually assume that the time that the last minutes I've spent debugging are because of Claude? Because if you'd ask me, that's basically what I would say, no? Because probably if I would take this, like they had more chances to be more attentive on what I'm than what some agent wrote for me. So let's try to see it. So I have the test client. This is the last for today. And then password. Okay, test client. And then password. Oh my God. Now it's not. Oh, damn. It's because probably. Oh, this was more difficult today than usually. So no password encoder. and then password without that, and then restart. Let's see. Wasn't I using test user? So once again, I think I'm also a bit tired now. It's already, we are working for some time and it's end of day here. I don't want to find excuses, but let's try one more time. So client, redirect URI once more, this one, this one, read, then test user, and then password. Password, okay, consent, yes, submit consent, yes, I get the code, and I'm gonna say authorization, client, and secret, body, scope, read, and this. And we finally got an access token. Woohoo! So it was actually because of the password encoder. So you see, this is an example where I basically lost some time. You can say it's either because the agent put something wrong in there and I wasn't attentive enough. No, it's probably my fault as well. I should have seen. But do you always know all this? Can you always be attentive at all these details? No, it's true that I knew that if I have one password encoder, the same password encoder will be used by both the client and the user. I knew that. But somehow I didn't figure it out now. So if the agent would have actually put it that right from the very beginning, I wouldn't have lost all this time trying to debug the stuff. But I did now, of course, both of my fault, but also because of a misconfiguration. And this is another important time to emphasize that, hey, the agentic AI and the AI in general doesn't always write everything correct, no? So you need to be careful. It doesn't always write everything correct. So now I can try to look, is this started? No, it isn't. So let's make sure we are on 1990 will be, okay, 1990 will be. I'm gonna start this and I'm gonna try to call the /user endpoint, which is the one I created, which is the /user, no? /user endpoint on port 1990. So, which is a get, I think. No, paths get, okay. So HTTP localhost 1990 user authorization bearer token, and then I have to put my token there. And look, the username test user comes back to 100. Okay, it works. We managed to implement the authentication. We managed to implement a dummy authorization server today and some working authentication, and to prove it. Enough for today, I would say. I'm happy with the result. I'm happy with the result. I think we actually did it okay. We struggled for like 10-15 minutes because of a misconfiguration that was added there by the agent. So you see, sometimes it happens. Sometimes you don't even see it. No, I wasn't able to see, to spot it at the very beginning. So I had to like spend some time to debug it. So is AI doing the things always correct? Clearly not. We've seen already a few times this happening, not putting the things right, perfect, sometimes not even functional, no. But we can still say we used it and we did quite a lot of things today as well. I'm really eager to see next time how it works now with a client. So what I want to do next time, I really want to have to start with an Angular application maybe and try to create the front end for this backend application, and myself now from now on start working on all three components, creating a front end, the backend, and the authorization server, which I would also like to to drive from a POC to a more realistic authorization server where we use appropriately hashing, where we use appropriate storing in a database, and so on and so forth. So that's it for next time. Thank you very much for being here with me. I hope you have enjoyed today's episode as well. I hope you also have learned something new. I invite you, of course, to come back here to me next time, and let's figure out some new stuff we can build with Agentic AI. Until then, have an excellent time for learning. I'm waving goodbye. Thank you very much, and